This video is part of our first AC training series. This is like a camera AC 101 video. I'm going to do a complete breakdown of every single piece of gear that is on this camera and a couple of the support accessories and some other things, so that you so if you don't know what any of this is, by the end of this video you'll know what every single piece of equipment is on this camera. Pretty much all of the gear that is on this is going to work with other professional cinema cameras. So the only things that are going to be a little bit different are like your cage, like your top handle and your cage that goes around the camera that has all these screw holes in it, these threads in it. Because, you know, obviously the different cameras have different shapes and sizes, so they have their own custom cages. But for when it comes to all the other accessories, you know, these will all work with just about any other camera. And, you know, these will have the, you know, similar names too. Like the top handle is a top handle. It doesn't matter what camera it is. This handle is called a top handle. This is, the cage is called a cage, right? It's just that they will be different depending on which manufacturer's gear you're using. We're going to go top to bottom and front to back and cover every single piece of this camera. Let's start with the back. So here in the very back we have two batteries. These are gold mount batteries. So these have three studs that line up into this plate, and the connections go here. So we just make sure it's level with the plate, and then you just slide it and it'll lock. This is the lock right here. So you just put your thumb on it, push down, and then pull the battery and it comes out. This plate that this one battery is on has two. This is the reason why I was able to pull it off and not lose power to the camera. One, because it has another battery, and also we're in AC power. But if we look here, this plate is a shark fin. We call it a shark fin because it, you know, like it's a fin, right? So it has two of these gold mount battery plates on it, and then it just goes straight to the power plate from this particular cage. So this is a Panavision cage, and so this is a custom cage made by Panavision, and they have their own power plate that has a bunch of different power distribution and also has video outs on it. So this gold mount plate, we'll just throw the shark fin on it. It has those three studs as if it was a battery, but it's connected to these plates. So it's male and female. And then we just plug it in, and then we can plug our two batteries in. All right, so moving forward, on that plate, we have here where this cable, this power cable is plugged in to our Teradek. So this power cable here is called a D-tap or a P-tap. The reason why is because obviously this connector looks like a D, or if you hold it, you know, from the side, it looks like a P, right? I personally call it P-tap. That's just what I've always called it. And this is what it looks like in the battery plate. Now you always have to make sure they have a plus and minus symbol on here, right? So you always have to make sure that these are lining up. And there's only the shape of the reason why it's shaped this way is because it will only go in that one way. So never try to force it in the wrong way. If this curved part is trying to go in this flat part and you force it in there, it will short out whatever is connected into it and it'll fry it. And it'll break it. So always make sure that you're not forcing it in and that it's lining up the way that it's supposed to. All right, so moving forward on this plate, we have some of these cables are in the way. So if you have here, we have our AC power. So this is called a LEMO pin, or LEMO connector. So it's a very common connector that we use on professional cinema cameras, as well as BNC. So this connector does a lot of different things. It will send data, and it will also send power. So this particular one is just a power cable, and it's powered directly from our block down here. So the way it's connected to our block battery is through 4-pin XLR cable. And it's going straight into here, into our 4-pin XLR. You always make sure it's turned on, otherwise you won't get any power. So then we'll plug our camera back in. Moving on to the rest of this, I'm gonna pull these out so we can see. So here we have a bunch of BNC connectors. So this, instead of HDMI, because HDMI is such a delicate connector, on professional cinema cameras, most of them don't even have HDMI on them. So they're used, or BNC connector. And so this is how we're going to send video from the out of the camera to our wireless video to transmit video across the set. So this is a BNC connector. And the way it is there's two pins sticking out on the side here. If you could see, I'll try to get in there. There's two pins, top and bottom. And you just have to line up these two pins with it. You can just gently rotate it to find it. And then you twist and it locks it in. It like screws in and then locks. And then so it's very secure and it's way more sturdy than HDMI. So this is why we use this instead of HDMI on cinema cameras, because these cameras get tossed around, they're moving around really fast. These cables get pushed on or pushed against and moved around a lot. So I mean, HDMIs would be done instantly. So that's why we use BNC, and they're also called SDI. So BNC is the connector and SDI is the cable. So these are SDI cables, and they send video to our ins and outs on our cameras and our accessories. So moving on our plate, if we look in here, we have different accessory power. So let's move these BNCs out. We have these going to different things. So if we look in here, let's swing this out. So this cage, the nice thing about this cage is I can swing it out. I can swing this plate out. So we'll swing some of these out. So let's pull some of these. All right, so we've got this swung out. We just push these and then swing it. And then the other side will do it too. You can take the whole thing off, but if you just want to swing one side, you just do the two and you can get in here, and allows you to get into the back of the camera as well. But let's do this so we can see a little bit better. So now we have here our accessory powers. We have a 14 volt with a 7 amp, and then we have 14 volts, which are 2-pin LEMOs. These are all LEMO connectors. These are the female connectors. So they have 2 pins. There's just 2 pins in there. But then if we come down, there's 24 volt power, which has 3 pins. So those are our 3-pin connectors. So different accessories have different power draws. And so some accessories only require 2-pin, and then more power-hungry accessories like our Preston here, like our wireless Focus, requires 3-pin. And it also can send a signal to let the camera know to start rolling or to stop rolling. To make sure that don't ever try to jam a 2-pin into a 3-pin or a 3-pin into a 2-pin. These also have a way to line them up. So if we look here, there's a little red dot on this LEMO connector, and usually there's little red dots. They're kind of hard to see because they get worn off, but there's also this little key here, and it usually generally points up. So you want to find that key with the little red dot, and this is a 2-pin. So if we look in the cable, in the LEMO connector, it's 2 pins in there. There's just 2 pins, and so we find our 2-pin on our battery plate, and we just plug it in. And now we also have a 3-pin as well. Here we have our 3-pin. This is for our wireless Focus, so we'll plug that back in into our 3-pin. And again, the dot is up, right? Okay. So then now, let's unplug those one more time. And I'm going to show you the back of the camera before we cover this all up. So on the Alexa Mini, we have a 5-pin LEMO up here, and this is for our time code. This is if you have what's called a locket box, and it will jam sync time code from a mixer, a sound mixer. And that way, in post, when the sound mixer is recording, their time code is exactly synced with the time code in the camera. So they're jamming that little locket box, and then you take that locket box and you put it on the camera and into this port, and then it jams the camera. So they're perfectly synced. So in post, they can just drop the sound on top of the media right away, and they don't have to try to sync it up visually with the slate clapping, right? So different cameras will have different ports. Most cameras will have BNC timecode, but a lot of the minis, like the LF and the LX35, they all have a 5-pin LEMO timecode. And then down here we have an Ethernet connector. This allows you to connect in, and then you can get these wireless transmitter boxes that will allow you to change all of the settings on the camera. And you can also like load custom looks onto the camera, change all the settings, and load custom like frame guides and things like that. Don't use this too often. This is mostly something that a DIT will use, a digital image technician, because they're the ones doing like color on set. So they'll mostly deal with that, if anyone is. And then right here we have our power button for the Alexa Mini. Now if we look here, we'll move this stuff out of the way. Take this plate off for a second. So now these are the connections straight from the camera. So we have this is our viewfinder cable. So we have our viewfinder. And this is a proprietary cable. This cable will only work with here. No other cable will work with the viewfinder. And you have to make sure it's lined up. So you can see someone's, usually a lot of people will color in this arrow, and it lines up with that red dot, and it's the only way it'll go in. It's a little finicky. But that's on just the Mini. There's a different connector for like the LF and the Alexa 35. And all the other cameras will have different connectors. That's just for this camera. Then we have our SDI 1, which is our video 1 signal coming out of the camera, and then we have an SDI 2, which is our another video out. And then here we have our battery going straight into the camera body. Now this, because we have our accessory power plate, we're plugging in from here into our power plate, which is how we get all of this extra power. And then down next under that is our EXT port, and this takes and goes into this plate as well. And this allows us to get that start, stop, or run stop that I was talking about from our wireless focus system, because you need to wirelessly be able to record and cut the camera. So that allows this plate to talk to the camera to do that. Now this at the top, there's this little antenna threading. That's for a little antenna that comes with the camera. That way you can talk to the camera with an app. There's a Wi-Fi app, and you can connect directly to this camera. It can change all the settings with the Wi-Fi app. It also works for the antenna if you're using an ARRI wireless focus system. This is how you will get your signal for that wireless focus system. The camera acts as its own MDR. Let's keep moving forward. Before we get too far up this way, let's come back here. So this is our Teradek. This is our wireless video transmission. So if we look on the other side of it here, we have our power button and a way to get through into the menus of it. Also, there is a Bluetooth app that you can use with this particular Teradek. This is a 4K LT or 4K 750 LT. So the 750 means that's the distance that it will work line of sight. So this is a 750-foot wireless video transmitter. So now on our Teradek, we have our SDI video coming from the out in the camera and then going to our in. And then this is our power. We have another 2-pin LEMO power, which is that PTAP power that we talked about earlier. So that's how we're getting power for our Teradek. And up here we have 2 antennas that just screw in to the top. Now this arm that it's on, this is called an ultralight arm. So this arm, they have like these little knuckles, and they go into these balls, and they have different, you can get a bunch of different kinds of accessories for these. But right now we have a 1/4 20 thread or bolt, and then we have a 3/8 bolt so that they can go into this top handle and then the bottom of the Teradek. Now since we're talking about the bolts, so it's standard across basically all camera cages that, unless there's some weird funky one, generally they should all be sticking to the same standard, is that all of these accessory threads all over this cage are either 1/4 20, which is this smaller one here, or they're 3/8, which is this larger hole here. So those are the 2 bolt sizes that you're going to be using for putting on accessories. So that's what, so we have, 1/4 20, 3/8, we got another 3/8 that we're using, we have another 3/8 that we're using, and then we have a 1/4 20 going into our monitor here. So those are the 2 standard sizes that you'll be using for all of your accessories. We have, this is our MDR. This is what talks to our focus hand unit. So we have our focus here, and we have our iris, and you can also add a zoom to this. We'll come back to this in a minute. So this is what talks to that and sends out a signal. And it looks like right now we don't have power, so let's see, I forgot to power it back on. So let's power it on. This is the 3-pin LEMO. We'll just go into our 3-pin. There, now we have power. And it's going to automatically try to calibrate. So I'm just going to unplug these a little bit so they stop, because I don't have them connected to the lens yet. Okay, so now we have our power on our MDR. is telling us what channel our MDR is on. And to change it, we just hold this down until it flashes. And then now we can change channels, right? And then just let it go and it'll hold. This is where we're plugging in our motor cables. So these are all of our motor cables that are running up and then going into our two motors. So we have an iris motor and a focus motor. So if we look here on our MDR, it's a little hard to see. If we pull this off again, and if we look on here, we have, in the bottom here, we have different letters. We have F-I-Z, fizz, like Preston Fizz. That's what it's called for focus, iris, and zoom. So here, focus, iris, zoom. And auxiliary is for some other accessories that we won't be getting into. So on this side, we have our power and our camera. But if you noticed, I only had one cable in here and it was still getting power, and it was plugged into this camera port. Because you could make a cable that does both power and run stop for the camera, which means recording and cutting the camera. So we just have to plug in to one, right here, the camera with the blue ring around it. And then all these other ports, these are for a bunch of other accessories, which again, we're not going to get into. And then also, the only other part you're going to be using is this button here. This is to calibrate the lenses. So once you put a new lens on, you need to calibrate. So it'll roll through the focus and all the way through the iris, and then it'll be calibrated. And then you'll choose that lens in your handset, and then you can get your accurate focus marks after you've programmed it. So you have to program all of the lenses. We won't be getting into programming on this in this video, but that's what you'll have to do. I am going to make there is going to be a separate video just on programming lenses with the Preston and the other wireless systems like the WCU4 and the Hi5. So now, I haven't marked these, and ideally if this was going on a job, I would mark with some tape which one this is for, with an F or an I. So one of them is the focus and one of them is the iris. So this is the top one is F, so looks like I chose the right one, but I'm going to plug it again because it's not on the gear. And then this is going to be our iris. So I'll plug this back into that's part of our cables here that are going into our two motors. So let's see what these other cables are going up to. So we have, coming up this way, we have our monitor. So this is our onboard monitor. If we spin the camera around, we have our onboard monitor. This is a 7-inch small HD monitor, and this is for the operator, right? And then into the monitor, we have our, let's see if we can get this so you can see, we have our BNC coming into it, our SDI BNC, and then we have our 2-pin LEMO power coming in. And then this arm that it is on is called a NOGA arm. And it allows you to articulate and get it kind of wherever you want. And there's a way you can bend this around pretty much almost anywhere you want. And then if you spin the base, you can spin it more. And it has, once you see one, you can play with it and see how it works. And then you just, to lock it in position, you want to hold the monitor where you want it. And then you just tighten down on this handle here. And ideally, you want it to be level. And so, like I said, this is a 3/8 here, and this is a 1/4-20 here into the side of this monitor. These are all 1/4-20 holes. And to power this monitor on, we'll just hold down the power button. It takes a second. I'm not going to go into how to use this monitor. There's a lot of different things for this monitor, but basically you just need to turn it on, and then you can go over to the menu and make sure that you are in the right input for the monitor so you can get a signal. That's what we have these cables are running to. And then we had our EVF cable. This is our EVF, our electronic viewfinder. So this is the viewfinder of our camera and how we're going to do a lot of the settings and controls in the camera. So this is where we'll set up all of our settings for, we have our frame rate, we have our time code, our shutter, and then we have our exposure index or our ISO setting. Then we have a look where we can load in custom LUTs and looks. And then we have our white balance. And then we get all of this other information about the camera here. We get what reel number we're on A001, what clip number we're on of that roll, and then also the duration of that last clip. And then it's also telling us what our camera settings are. We're in ARRI RAW, we're shooting at 3.4K resolution, which is open gate, as we see here. And then we have our standby, which tells us if we're standby ready to roll, or if it's red, that means we're rolling. So if we press that, now we're rolling. We've hit the record button and we're rolling. And then it'll go back to green standby when we're not rolling. And then here we have a jog wheel on the side, which is how you get into your menus. I'm not going to go in deep depth in the menus. So that's basic. And then on the top of the Viewfinder, we have a bunch of user buttons that we can program. And some of them are already programmed. I know it's upside down right now. Here, let's see if we can switch it. Let's go right side up. So if we go here, we see we have like peaking, exposure. Let's see what that does. So if we do peaking, it's going to do like focus peaking. It'll highlight sharp things in red, and you can adjust the sensitivity. And we're going to go exposure, which shows us, this is a false color mode that shows us our exposure. If you can see this, it shows our exposure. So if I roll this, you can see it goes into different colors. And so the different colors have different exposure meanings. So purple means there's no detail. Blue, you're getting pretty close. And then generally you want skin tones to be in like the green and pink. And then as you start getting into orange, where we're not bright enough in here, but you start getting into like yellow and orange and red, then you're clipping in the highlights. And then like again, blues and purples are starting to clip in the blacks. So that's a good tool to use when you're on set. And then you can program these other buttons and the record button, and then this is how you switch to see all of your settings and then go back to the monitor. All right, so then this is the Viewfinder. This is the actual eyepiece. And then there's a diopter in there. So you can adjust depending on what your vision is. You can kind of help adjust, and you want that to be sharp. So this is our eye cup, and you can put what's called a chamois on here so that you don't get like pink eye and stuff, or from other people using it. When someone uses it, you want to change the chamois out. That chamois is only for one person. So if someone else is going to operate the camera, change out the chamois. And you want to change them out like every couple of days. Let's come back to the other side of the camera. Let's come back to this. Obviously, like I said before, this is the top handle. And it has a bunch of accessory threads in it for us. And then we have our top plate, which our top handle is bolted into. And then we have our Viewfinder bracket. So this is the bracket that sets up our Viewfinder. Oh, we're getting twisted around here. So this is our Viewfinder bracket. And now we can loosen these, and we can slide it forward here. And then we can also loosen here to rotate this up and down. And this is so that the operator, when they're doing handheld, they can get the eyepiece exactly where they want it. And then another one with this is we can slide it in and out, right? Because your eye is going to be a different distance from the side of the camera. And then again, we can also loosen this other one. And we can slide it in and out again. You'll notice that a lot of these things that you use to tighten and loosen a lot of the accessories, you can pull them out. So you can like pull them out, loosen them, spin them to get them so where you can easily tighten or loosen it instead of having to like try to get your hand in there at an awkward angle, or maybe it's bumping up against something and you can't loosen or tighten anymore. So you just pull it out and you spin it, and then now you can tighten it or loosen it the way you need to. So now we're up at the monitor. Let's kind of work our way back down. So this is called an iris rod. And so this allows us to get our motors where we need them out in front of the camera to get to our focus and iris gears. So here's our focus gear and our iris gear. So otherwise, there's no way to get motors out here. So that's what the rod is for. And the way that I build my cameras, especially if we're doing handheld, is I like to go off of the side with a 15mm rod. So there are two standard sizes of rods. So there are 19mm rods and 15mm rods. 15mm rods are a little bit smaller than the 19mm. You can see the difference here. Now the reason you would want to use 19 over 15 is if you're using a very large, heavy zoom lens, or even a prime lens. There's old prime lenses that are very long and heavy. So what you'll do is use the 19mm down on the bottom with your bridge plate. So this is our bridge plate here, and it has the 19 mil rod holes in it, if you can see. So here, so that's what we would use our 19 mil for. When we do the Zoom build breakdown, we're going to be on 19 mil rods, because you'll see that the Zoom is pretty big and pretty heavy. So they just slide in. You loosen the rod mount, and they just slide in, and then you tighten it. Again, like I said, this one's actually, they have stops here, so you can only twist it so much. So you have to pull it out and then, you know, twist it, tighten it, or loosen it. So if you're going to be in studio mode, which means you're going to be on a head, or, you know, on sticks, or like on a dolly, and you're only going to be doing that, then you can do your whole motors, all your motors off of the rods down here. And we will have to when we come to our Zoom. So that's what you would use 19 mils over 15 mil for. They're just more sturdy and stronger. Because sometimes if you're using 15 mil for a very long, heavy lens, they'll start to bow a little bit, and you don't want that. You want the lens to be perfectly straight. All right, so we've got that 15 mil iris rod. On here, this bracket that we have here for our iris motor is a hill bracket. This particular bracket is called a hill bracket, and it slides up and down. So if we loosen, get rid of this. So if we loosen this here, it allows us to slide this, and it also rotates. And it has teeth in here, so it catches, so that once you tighten it, it won't wiggle. Because you can't have these motors wiggle at all, or they'll just pop right off and start grinding the gears. So, you know, you can rotate it, find where you need it to be, and then you just tighten it down. So we'll go here. So I've got it, it's connected, it's seated in the other gear on the lens. So this is our focus motor here, and I honestly don't know the name of this bracket. I think it's just a Preston motor bracket, and it has a different system. So it's not like the Hill bracket. So it just has holes for the 19 mil. It's standard without the adapter, this blue adapter here, it's 19 mil, and then we need this blue adapter on both of ours to go to 19 mil. So that's how we're getting this 19 mil bracket onto the 15 mil. There's just a little ring adapter. So this motor, if we look at it, compared to the other one, so let's swing this one out. So if we look, this motor is thinner. It's like half the thickness. So it's like 2 motor thicknesses. And the reason for that is because the iris, typically, even with old vintage lenses, sometimes the focus gear will travel with the lens as it's changing focus. So it'll move in and out with the housing, right? So that's why sometimes you're gonna want, most of the time, you're gonna want this fat gear, because then it allows that gear to travel along this gear and it won't pop off. Like, it doesn't always, sometimes, some of them, they travel a lot, but and you can get even like really fat gears for it. But if you can just find the sweet spot to where it'll travel the full length. And as long as you're getting, you don't have to bite the whole gear. As long as you're getting like half that gear, then you can let it travel. So it could travel halfway off here, and then it'll travel all the way halfway off here, and you'll still have good contact with that gear. So that's why this one has a fatter gear compared to this motor. Also, this motor, this is a DM1X motor. So this is a stronger, more powerful motor compared to the iris motor. This is a DM2 motor, right? Yes, this is a DM2 motor, so it's not quite as strong, and it doesn't need to be, because iris they're super easy to spin, but a lot of times, again, with older lenses, the focus gears can be very stiff, and you need as much power as you can get with these stronger DM1X motors. So we'll just put that, make sure it bites. So let's pop the matte box off so you can see kind of what I'm talking about here. So if we look here, I'm going to swing this out. So this cable is a little in the way. So we'll pull this out, and then I'm just going to swing this in until it's just catching and it's lining up with that gear, and then I'm just going to tighten it. You don't have to press it really hard, just a little bit, just enough so it's seated in there and firm, but you do need to make sure it's tight so it's not going to wiggle out. If this wiggles out, it'll pop off, and again, it'll grind the gears. So then we'll do the same thing for our focus. Now in the prep video, I set this all up. This is just easily, I know already how these are going to work together. in the prep video, it took us a minute to figure out the setup for these motors. So when you're doing your prep, that's something you're going to have to figure out. So we plug in our cable and it's going to start to calibrate automatically. Same thing with our iris. I'll plug that in and it's going to start to calibrate. All right, so like again, I'm not going to go full into how to use this, but when you do that, say you need to calibrate all of your motors, you've put a new lens on, there's that button that I showed you, and you come in here and you press that button and it will calibrate all of the motors. So now the motors are calibrating and it's spinning them and finding the two ends of those, the travel of those gears. And then once it's found it, it'll snap back. So these particular handheld handles, these are called spider grips. A bunch of different companies have different ones, they have different names for them. Basically, they're just handheld grips is what you can call them. So if you are at your prep and you need them, just say, hey, we need some handheld grips. And now I have this, what these connect with, actually, this is called a rosette. And it's using 1/4-20 to come into this rosette. And it's connecting, and they're like little teeth, if you can see. And they get in there and that keeps them from rotating. Again, you don't want any wiggle. You need that camera to be rock steady. This thing here, this is an extension. So I've extended out. There's another rosette. If we look on the other side, getting tangled again. So this is a rosette, just the normal rosette that I've added onto this cage. So Panavision, like again, this is a full custom Panavision camera cage with all these threadings on it. They have these rosettes that will go into the 3/8 right here on the edge of the cage, and it's specifically for doing handheld. Instead of having to there's a bracket for the handles, there's this rod bracket for it. Now, when I'm doing handheld, I want to lose all of this, so I don't use this. But you can put it here on the rods here, or sometimes I already took it off, but there's a lightweight 15 mil. So we were talking about the different rod sizes. So the different rods, there's 19 mil studio. So that's what this bridge plate is. This is a 19 mil studio bridge plate. There's also a 15 millimeter studio bridge plate. And then also up here, so this will actually mount in here into these holes here. It's the plate, this is on another plate. There's another plate where all this is connected and it's slid back a little bit so it's not lining up. But this will go here. And then you can put your 15 millimeter lightweight system on there. Now back to the spider grips or handheld grips, like I was saying, this one has 19 mil studio and 15 mil lightweight because again, we're 19 mil studio. But if I wanted to, I could put that lightweight on and I could put this here. So there's another option to put your handles. But personally, I like to do it this way. So I get these rosettes, and this is all going to be different depending on what camera and cage you're using and what handles you're using. So this is not like the standard way. And then over here this is what I just call like a little side bracket. So it's on top of the regular rosette, and it allows me to get the handle out further so that I'm not bumping my motors. Because if I had this on the camera, it would be here. Well, it would be, basically the handle would be kind of down like this, right? And we want to be able to get it at least almost level so we can get it out a little bit more. So this allows me to get it out away from those motors. I can get it a little bit more level. So now let's work our way. So how we have here in the front of the camera, we have our lens mount. So this is our lens mount. Panavision has a proprietary lens mount, and they also have their own different sized lens mounts. Right now, the main mount on this Mini is their 70 millimeter lens mount. So if we just pop this lens off, we'll see this is a very large mount. It's huge, but it's for their like 70 millimeter lens that are made for like IMAX cameras or like 70 millimeter film cameras. So this amount allows you to use all of those lenses on this camera. Now we are adapted to PL. So if we pop the lens off, so this is our lens adapter. This is adapting from Panavision's 70 mount and going into PL mount, which is the most standard mount for professional cinema lenses. So Panavision has their own proprietary lens mount for a lot of their lenses. It's called PV mount, obviously. And so what it is there's this little pin. You can see there's a little pin here, and it lines up directly into this hole at the bottom of the mount. So there's the bottom of this mount, and then there's this pin here. So, and it's the only way it will go on. It's the only way this mount will go on, this adapter will go on, and it's the only way that a PV lens will go on. So there's no other orientation that you could accidentally put that lens on. With PLs, you can actually rotate them, a lot of them, because they'll have, if we look here on our lens, it has holes on all of the flanges here. So we could, in theory, rotate this lens any way we wanted and put it on, and because it's spherical, the image will still be the same. But typically you just want to put the lens right side up, so that way you can see all of your markings the right side up, right? You don't want to be like looking upside down trying to figure out what iris or what stop you're at, or what your focus mark is at. So then this lens, so here we're to our lens. So this is a Cooke S4 lens. This is a 25mm lens. This is a cinema lens. It has cinema gears on it for our focus motor and our iris motors. And also, the nice thing about these lenses is they're mostly uniform housing. So all the front diameters are the same, and all of the gears are in the same distance in the same spot. So we don't have to move our motors around when we're switching lenses. So now that brings us to our matte box. So this is called a matte box. And one of the reasons it's called a matte box is because it uses these mats. So these they clip in. Here, let's throw it on first. So the way you throw it on, so this is a clip-on matte box. There are Studio swing-away matte boxes, which I don't have on this build, but there will be one on the Zoom. So we have our backing on our lens, or on our matte box. It's our lens backing. So this pops off, and then it goes on. And each, different lenses have their own front diameter size in millimeters. There's a lot of millimeters being thrown around. So the front diameter of the Cooke S4s is 110 millimeter. So and they're all the same, so we don't have to change the backings. But if you have different front diameter lenses, you'll have to get different backings for it and change the backings. So, and then to break down the matte box even further, we have our filter trays. So they loosen from the side here, these little parts, they loosen the trays and you can pull them out. I'm just gonna do one. So I'll tighten these back up and then I'll loosen. And then we have our filter tray. This matte box is a 4x5 filter matte box. So this tray is for a 4x5 filter. Technically they're 4x5.65, but we just call them 4x5. You can also, I believe in these trays, you can also use 4x4s. They're not used very much, but there's old 4x4s. It's just a square and it'll fit in this tray as well. So they just slide in and then you put your different filters in each tray. The way that you put a filter in is it's just a spring-loaded little clamp. And so you would take your filter, rest it in, and then clamp it and put it in. Let me grab a filter real quick and I'll just show you really quick. Okay, so I just have an ND filter that we're gonna throw in here. I usually don't do this way. Let me switch to the other side. I usually do it with my left hand. All right, so we have our filter tray, and then we're gonna just rest it here and make sure it's not gonna fall. And we'll let it sit, and then you just pull the spring up here, and then it clicks in, and then now it's not gonna go anywhere. So now our filter's in, and then now you can slide in. Make sure it's a little looser. Make sure on the bottom there's a little safety. So this is so the trays don't fall out from the bottom, which it does happen. So make sure you have your safety on, so that way when you're pushing this through, it just doesn't go whoop and fall to the floor and break. So we've loosened that. Might need to loosen the other trays. Sometimes they get wiggled around. There we go. And they kind of get in the way of each other. So now we have our ND filter in our matte box. So the way this goes on with our matte box backing is it just kind of goes on the front, and then you tighten it down from the top here. And you want it to be pretty tight. Just crank it down pretty good. and then you should be able to just wiggle it and it shouldn't really go anywhere. Make sure the backing ones are tight as well. And now it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to come off. So the front part of this matte box, this plastic part here, all of this is called the shade. And you can pull this off. If we look here, there's Allen screws here, and you can pull this shade off. Sometimes you'll want to do that because you might have like a wide angle lens and you're catching some of the shade, and you can pull that off. Or if for some reason you need to get like really close to something and you're creating a camera shadow, you can pull the matte box shade off. We do it. It's not something that happens too often, but it's something you can definitely do. It just takes like a minute to pull it off. Now, on top here, we have these two little nubs that tighten down, and this is for our eyebrow. So a matte box should always come with an eyebrow. So we're going to loosen it. I'm just going to loosen it so we can rotate it. And then you just tighten down on these. And then here, you loosen this and allows you to freely rotate it. And then once you find the spot, you tighten it. So what you're doing, the way to use the eyebrow is, let's lose our ND because we can't see anything. And then you always want to put your tray back in. You don't want to lose these trays. Always put them back in. Even if they're empty, just put them in there. So if we look here, we're seeing some of that eyebrow. And this is a 25 mil, so we're pretty wide. And so what you want to do is you just want to find it to where it's just out of frame and then tighten it down. And you can even kind of leave it a little stiff. Don't tighten it too much. Just leave it enough where you can kind of move it. And then you can just adjust. If we look here, see now it's fully in the shot. And we want to get it at least above this line. This is our frame line, right? So if we just get it, and it has a little bit of, it's going to come back a little bit. So if we get it, like that's good. Even though we're getting it a little bit here, this is out of our frame. So this is our frame guide. It's out of our frame. But let's say the top was our frame, right? So we just come up a little bit more, and then we can kind of give it a little tap to make sure it's not coming in, and then now we're clear. The eyebrow is to help with flares. So let's say there's a light washing out the image and you're not getting that crisp, contrasty image. That's where this will help with that. It'll block that light, it'll shade the lens, and you'll get that clean image again. And then if you're a longer lens, you can dip it way down in there. We're just on a 25 millimeter, so we're pretty wide, so we can't get it down deep. So you'll adjust depending on what lens you're on. And I think that mostly does it for the camera itself. Now we're going to go down, and we're going to get into what some of the support is that we're using on the camera. Or using for the camera to support it. Here we have this silver block. This is a riser. So this is rising it to the camera to the standard height, because there's also, there's standard sizes with the rods. There's also a standard height for lenses when they need to be supported to get the lens a certain height. So that's what this rising block is for. And then above that we have a plate. So this loosens, and we can slide forward and backward on this plate. So there's lots of ways to slide the camera. So that's what this is for. And then this is our bridge plate. This is the lock for the bridge plate. And this bridge plate allows us to slide back and forth on the dovetail. So this plate that the bridge plate is on is a dovetail. So I have one here. So this is a dovetail because it's shaped like a dovetail. And then it has a release on the back. So you can slide the camera off. It's like a lock, so if it accidentally slides, if for some reason you forget to lock this and the camera tilts and it slides, it'll catch it. So you just push that in and then you slide the camera off of it. It also has a safety in the front. Some of these will have this lock in the front and the back. So that way you can slide the camera forward and backwards. Those are always nice to have. And then on the bottom of this dovetail, we have a quick release plate. So this is the Ronford Baker standard size quick release plate. And this is what goes into the next plate. There's a lot of plates. So this next plate, I'm going to pop the camera off. All right, so here on our head, we have the next plate is called a Euro plate. And the way we get the Euro plate off is we pull this forward and pull this lever out, and then you can either push down on here or push here. I just push here, it's easier to get to, it's easier to do. And then this will tilt and pop off. This is called a Euro plate. This is what we use to adapt to here. You can also put a dovetail straight onto this. I have this plate, but you have to take this plate off. So you can take this plate off and put this straight on here. But this gives you a little more wiggle room for sliding forward and backward with your dovetail. And it's just pretty standard. You always put this on. Also, this helps you to quickly pop camera on and off. This is way faster than doing this. So with this, it'll click in and then you can snap it off. Now this is the head. This particular head is an O'Connor 2575D fluid head with a Mitchell mount. That's how it's connected to the sticks. These particular sticks are babies. So we don't call them tripods. We call them either babies, which are the shorter ones, or we call the other ones standards. So if we look over here, these are our standard legs. These aren't even raised. So this is the lowest they'll go. But these babies, they're raised all the way up and they're on top of these rolling spreaders. We always want to bring both because there's different lengths. So remember, the short ones are babies and then the tall ones are called standards. So we have our pan handle and we can rotate this pan handle and move it up and down, right? So, and then here we have our tilt fluid. So this is for, if we tighten this, it'll get more drag on the tilt. And that's good if you're doing long lens stuff or if you just need some resistance. And then on the other side, we have our tilt lock. We have our pan lock. And we have our pan fluid. Again, long lens, and it gives you some drag, so it makes it harder to spin the head. It can smooth out your operating. And then we also have here, this is a lock. So if we were to bring this, we flip that lock to red, now it'll find there's a particular spot where this is level and it'll lock it. So it's good if like you're gonna walk away from the camera and you have like a heavy camera or something and you don't want it to tilt just in case, you can lock it. Most of the time you're not gonna use that. You're just gonna put it down to green and keep it open so you can tilt the camera. And you don't have to go real tight with this tilt lock. You can just go loose. You don't have to don't crank this up because it'll mess it up. In front of this we have our front box mount, but no, not a lot of people use front boxes anymore. I don't even have one. And then here we have the level. So we're gonna use our level all the time. So you want that bubble. We have a light here, a button to put a light on the bubble. You always want that bubble in the middle of that circle. You never want it to be outside of that circle. You want to try to get it as dead center as possible on that bubble. And then we have here, these two bolts sticking out are for an eyepiece leveler, which isn't something else people really don't use as much anymore either. Some people still use them, especially when you're on like a big zoom or something and you're on a dolly or you're on sticks. But most people just use the monitor, the 7-inch or a 5-inch onboard monitor. They don't really use the eyepiece as much as they used to. So the Mitchell mount. This is the Mitchell mount. So down here, I don't know, you probably can't see, but I'll try to get it with the GoPro. There's something called a tie down. So I'll loosen it up. So this is the tie down. It's just a 1/4 or 3/8 with a handle to tighten it and a giant washer. And it's what bites the mount with the head. So if we move the head, so this is a Mitchell mount. It's just a big circle. There's a keyway, and on the head, there's also a key. And then this is what goes underneath and then tightens it down. So the way that we line it up is some sticks will have 3 keyways, which is always nice because then you don't have to rotate and find it as much. But this one only has 1. So if we come over here, let me move the head around. So if we come here, you want to lock your pan, because if you don't, you'll just keep spinning the head instead of the mount. So if we come over, here to the keyway, someone has already put tape on this so we can see where the key is. And there's also a white dot here on the side. And then we just line that up and make sure it's seated and it's not rotating. And then we take our tie down and we try to find that screw without looking. This is always a challenge. Even for seasoned professionals, you can get caught not finding it like I am right now. I thought I was in there, I'm not good at it with my left hand. Oh, there, we found it. Usually when I'm putting it on, I'll use my right hand, and when I'm taking it off, I'll use my left hand. So now we're on there and we're secure. So now we can use our head. One thing we kind of went past is this is our counterbalance. So down here we have our counterbalance, and this is for when you're doing like big heavy cameras, like again, like a big zoom. So when you're tilting, you know, you want to find balance with the camera first, but then when you tilt, sometimes that weight will want to bring the camera down. So what this does is you adjust this counterbalance up or down to get it so that when you tilt the camera, with it unlocked, it doesn't move. So you can let go of the camera and then it won't move. I'm just locking it for demonstration. But then, and then you should also be able to tilt it back and it not move. And you can tell it's springing back on its own. I've loosened it and it's springing back. That's what the counterbalance is doing. It's pushing back on the weight of that camera. And you want it to be balanced so that it's, you put it here, you let go, and it stays. Another thing that we have for getting the camera low to the ground is our hi-hat. So this is a hi-hat, and it just allows you to put that head on here. And this one has 3 keyways, like I was talking about. And this allows you to get the camera low to the ground or on like a countertop or something. And you know, because the sticks will only go so low, and you still want to you know, operate from the head. So that's what this is for. There's also a low hat version where it's even like lower. It's like down to here. The way I have this Euro plate, I like to have it, technically this Euro plate is backwards. I like to have it backwards, so that way, because that's how I like to get the camera. Because if it's back here, I'm gonna have to, because I'm right-handed, I'm gonna have to like go like this, or I'm gonna have to go like this and then switch hands before I can move the camera. This way I can just walk up, grab the camera, unlock it. So you just put, to unlock it, you put your thumb and then you pull, and now it's unlocked, and you hold your finger there, you hold it forward, and then you can tilt and get it out. And then the way it locks back in is it'll click, and then you push until you hear that click. And then the camera's in there. So like I said, I like to hold it this way, and I can just walk up, and boom, I'm off instantly. So that's the way that I like to do my Euro plate. So let's go over just a couple things that I think I didn't talk about the media. So there's the media slot in the back here. So it's easier, in my opinion, to get to it here. And you can get in, there's a little door. The Mini is terrible design. The original Mini is terrible design where they put the media. But then we have our little media wallet with our media, and our card goes in here. So make sure you always have enough media. And then for our monitor, we have what's called a hoodman. And this is to help shade the monitor if it's really bright out. You definitely still get these if you can. But you know, our monitors are so bright now, they won't use these as much, but they're always good to have because you never know. There might be like a bright light right behind the operator. And then we also have this is our card reader. So obviously your card reader is going to be dependent upon what kind of media that your camera is using. So make sure you have the right connector as well for your computer. Now let's talk about the hand unit. So this is a Preston hand unit. It's part of the Preston Fizz wireless follow focus system. And this is what we're using to change the iris and the focus. So while it's calibrating, so this slider is what allows us to change the iris. So if we look here, and you can see on the big monitor there, if we look, it's gonna close down the iris and open it up. And then also, if we spin the knob, we're gonna go infinity to close. I haven't programmed this lens, so it's not lining up. Let's see, I don't think this lens is programmed in, it is not. But once you've programmed it, all of these markings will line up with the markings here. And you have to choose the correct ring. This is our focus ring. This is a pre-marked focus ring. So it has all these markings on it already. And there's different ones. So this one has a minimum distance of 3 feet. And there's different ones. So different lenses, you're gonna wanna use different rings. So, you know, be aware of that if you're ever doing something like this. And then, you know, like I said, we have our iris, and then we have our start stop or our run stop. If we press this, the light turns on, and then if we look, the camera is rolling. So if we look here, the camera is now rolling, and I can press it again. Now the camera's cut. There's our power button, and then we have our menu system. Again, I'm not going to go into this at all. So there's going to be a full video at some point of this entire system and how to set it up and use it and program it. And I go through a little bit of it in the prep video. I go pretty detailed in the prep video. I just don't go super in depth. I'm going to just show you a couple more things that I kind of skipped over. Is we have our 13-inch monitor. This is could be like a focus monitor or like a reference monitor on set. And then on the back, we have our receiver or our Teradek. So I'll just pop this off. So we have our receiver here, and it's just gold mount goes right on it. We'll click right on, and then we can also, it has a male gold mount on it as well. So we can just click this into the back of our 13-inch monitor for a focus monitor or like a director's monitor. And then obviously we have our antennas. And then on this side we have our power and then our little menu dial. And then on this side, we have 2-pin power to power it. If we're not going to do battery, we can do 2-pin power LEMO. And then we also have 2 SDI outs to go to our monitors. So we'll just slap this on the back of a monitor that has a battery plate. Or even if it doesn't, you can just connect it somehow and then just go power it with this and then put your SDI out into it. This also does have HDMI out, and the Teradek transmitter does have HDMI in, but it's pretty rare that we use it. There's maybe if we're using like a smaller, more prosumer camera, that we'll have to use the HDMI. But that's pretty much it. So I think that kind of covers everything, like a basic breakdown of what all of everything is on this cinema camera. So I'm not going to be able to get to the zoom, unfortunately, even though I was mentioning it. I've run out of time shooting here, and I have work, and I've already been here multiple days. So that might come in a future video or not. This will get you, gets you ready for that prep series. So you will probably, if you just watch this and then watch the prep series, we do go over the full zoom build, and you'll learn what those other pieces are. There's only a few other pieces that are in addition to this build, and so you'll learn what those are in that video. So I'm not too worried about not covering it here. So again, thank you for watching. I hope this answers a lot of your questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Going off walkie.